Hello, I want to go over our training design proposal that's going to be due in week 3. We'll be working on parts and pieces of that throughout the 3 weeks. If you take a look, if you scroll down to scoring rubrics, you'll notice that within here, there's our rubrics for discussions, faith integration, but there's also our instructional design proposal template, which you can use. Feel free to use it. Feel free not to use it. It is absolutely okay to not use it. The key here is that you are creative. You get creative with what you're going to do, and think of it like a proposal that you're the consultant and you're giving this proposal. So I'll be the company that you're giving it to. So you want to make it written in a way that it is extremely clear and that people want to read. So it shouldn't just be your typical APA style essay. Make it in a way that's meaningful, that grabs attention right up front and has enough content inside. And we're going to go through that. So when that starts with the cover page, uh, and here I even said, think of it as your consultant delivering a proposal to a client, and then start off with your purpose. Now, one thing that we in training, and I include myself quite often, is the purpose of training is not the objectives and things like that. The purpose has to match organizational goals, needs, or their mission. Because remember, we have to think from a perspective of what's in it for them, the old WIFT, what's in it for them. Because if we think of it from our perspective or a training perspective, why things are important, it may not match. So we need to make it so there's a purpose or a reason why the training's happening, and it has nothing to do with the actual training. It has to do with an issue or a problem from the receiving organization. So we need to think of it from that perspective. We need to, right from the start tying this to the mission, goals, or issues that the receiving organization is having. So now think of your audience. So the next step of the whole thing is to define your audience. Now, when we think of our audience, uh, don't don't think just in terms of demographic. They're going to be new employees, age ranging 25 to 35 years old. Think of why the training is important to them. Stop. Think of why the training is important to them, because it needs to be meaningful. Because as we're going to be learning, part of andragogy or adult learning theory is that learning needs to be meaningful and relevant. So that's going to be a big deal. So we want to include that. And we can use that support Malcolm Knowles. We can use many of his parts and pieces of the theory of adult learning or andragogy to support why it's important to them. Then we're going to jump in and we're going to do our training needs analysis. Now, this process we follow to know what we need to train. We're going to go deeper into this in week 2, I believe. And as we go deeper into it, it's also we can figure out what we need to train, because just because one person thinks so or anything else, or I think so because I'm the designer slash trainer, that doesn't mean that that is the correct thing. We need to dig in deeper and actually do a needs analysis, because in reality, when we do our needs analysis, much of the time, I'd say 80 to 90% of the time, we figure out that training really is not the answer. So I know that's not what you want to hear, but training is an expensive solution. So we need to find out exactly what we need to train and why. So, and then we have our KSAOs, knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. So here we want to get into detail about these KSAOs. So what KSAOs will the training be delivering for a learner? What will they be taking away? Will they be taking away a bit of knowledge? Will they be taking away a skill, a certain ability? And how do we know that that's important? Because that's all tied right back to training needs analysis, which will tie it all back to the meaningfulness of the audience. So you can see it all kind of builds on itself. And then we need to look at our learning objectives. Now, here's a table that we can use. And for our learning objectives, oops, let me grab a highlighter, I'm sorry. Here's a table we can use for our learning objectives. And here I've put in our strategies and evaluation. And you'll notice down below it has 2 separate sections. So this section, you're going to have a terminal objective. We'll be going over that and all the parts and pieces for that. Then enabling objectives. We're going to be going over that in detail as well. So just for now, think of terminal objective is the final outcome of the training. What will they be able to do once they get back on the job? And enabling objectives are stair steps to get them to being able to perform whatever the final objective of the class. And our evaluation strategy is going to be how do we know what we know? And then interactions or media, how do we get them there? Because as we go through our class, you're going to learn active training, active learning, things such as teaching to others. Typical lecture is not a good format to use. We're going to go ahead and look at the pyramid. You may have already seen that within our discussion question, the pyramid of what works for active training. So that is what we're going to put in here, because part of andragogy, people need to be engaged, and the only way to engage is through active learning. So we want to put different strategies in place, and this is where we mark them. So obviously here there's not a lot of space, so we're very short about what we write. We write the actual objective, quick evaluation strategy. One evaluation strategy could be overhead questions. It could be a test. It could be performing a certain function, and then the interactions. How are we going to get them to be able to do it? Not how we're going to show them or tell them how to do it, but how are they going to get there through the different interactions and media? That's the key. And so here's where you can go a little bit deeper into the instructional strategy and use those articles from our first discussion and the learning pyramid and all that. Use that as our instructional strategy and learning strategy, because remember, the focus has to be on the learner. These are going to be learner-centered courses. Then you're going to give a quick outline of the class. I know it's not going to be down to the details or following 2 assignments, but this one will be an outline, and it could just be a bulleted statement, bulleted outline with times and the process that you're going to use to get there. So think of it as if you were going to explain to your customer the flow of the class. So think of it like the flow of the class. First, we're going to have an introduction. We're going to do this activity, and then we're going to move here. So it's a management type class or a hands-on type class. What are you going to do? So am I in manufacturing? So we're going to have to, you may have to make a few things, a few assumptions here, and that's okay. In reality, if you were doing this for a customer, you would basically talk to them. So if you have any questions, always contact me. And then strategies for job transference. How are they going to use it on the job? So what are we going to do to make sure that 2-3 months down the road, they're actually performing the way they were trained? Because a lot of times they will actually perform properly in training, and then for certain reasons, time constraints, things like that, they will not follow those procedures on the job. So we're going to follow this through and look at strategies for job transference. One strategy could be simply creating job aids that are posted on the wall. I mean, it could be that simple that they're there. And then our evaluation strategies. These are critical. How are we going to evaluate in class? How are we going to evaluate 2 months down the road? And then return on investment. Remember, if we're focused on the organizational needs, guess what? Then we're automatically looking at return on investment, because this can be a tricky thing to measure. But we're going to kind of go over this in a bit more detail. So this is just our basic proposal. It's going to be doing week 3. My suggestion would be that you just kind of start looking at it, going through it. And if you have questions, contact me. There will be videos throughout the weeks, I should say, on specific parts and pieces of this. So I look forward to seeing what everybody comes up with, and I appreciate all the effort that it takes to put together a good project, because I know this is not the only thing tugging at your time. So I appreciate it, and have a great week.